The decline noise from the credit card terminal was loud enough to make the cashier flinch. I stood there in the middle of the hardware store, holding a box of galvanized nails and a new hammer, feeling the heat rise up the back of my neck. It wasn't embarrassment. It was confusion. I had worked 60 hours that week. I was a foreman for a commercial plumbing outfit, bringing in 6 figures a year, yet my card was rejected for a $40 purchase. "Try it again," I told the kid behind the counter. "The chip is probably dusty." He ran it again. Same harsh beep. "Insufficient funds, sir." I pulled out my phone and dialed Linda. She answered on the second ring, her voice sharp. She always sounded like I was interrupting something crucial, even if she was just watching daytime television. "What is it, Frank? I'm busy." "My card declined at the hardware store. I'm trying to buy supplies for the deck repair. Why is there no money in the checking account?" "Because you spend it all, Frank," she snapped. "I told you last week we were tight. The insurance auto-drafted and the utility bill was higher because you insist on keeping the AC at 68 degrees. You have to wait until Friday. Put the hammer back." "I made $3,000 last week, Linda. How are we out of money on a Tuesday?" "Do not start this with me. Do you know how much groceries cost? Do you know what the property tax looked like this quarter? You handle the pipes, Frank. I handle the bills. That was the deal. Now stop embarrassing us and come home." She hung up. I stood there staring at the phone. I put the nails back. I walked out to my truck, a 10-year-old Ford that needed a new transmission I apparently couldn't afford, and sat in the driver's seat. I punched the steering wheel. This had been our dynamic for 30 years. I made the money. She managed it. She had a background in bookkeeping from before we were married, and she constantly reminded me that I was bad with numbers. She claimed I had no concept of long-term planning. According to Linda, if I had control of the accounts, we'd be destitute within a month. So I took my weekly allowance, $200 cash for gas and lunch, and left the rest to her. I trusted her. She was my wife. We were supposed to be a team building toward a comfortable retirement in Florida, but sitting in that parking lot, unable to buy a box of nails, something snapped. It wasn't the lack of money. It was the math. I knew what I earned. I knew our mortgage was paid off 3 years ago. The math simply didn't work. I drove home in silence. When I walked into the kitchen, Linda was at the table with her calculator and her ledger. That gray ledger was her Bible. She recorded every penny. She looked up, annoyed. "Did you make a scene?" she asked. "I didn't make a scene. I want to see the bank statements, Linda." She slammed the ledger shut. "We are not doing this again. I showed you the spreadsheet last month. We are aggressively saving for the retirement property. That's why cash is tight. Do you want the beach house or do you want to buy useless tools? I want to see the actual bank statement, not your spreadsheet, not your notes, the paper from the bank. I went paperless 5 years ago, Frank. It's all online. And you don't have the passwords because you'd probably lock us out by typing it wrong." She stood up and started chopping vegetables, dismissing me. "Go wash up. Dinner is in 20 minutes, and stop spending money on coffee at the gas station. I saw that on the receipt you left in your pants. $3 a day adds up." I walked out of the kitchen. I didn't argue. Arguing with Linda about money was like wrestling a muddy pig. You just got dirty and the pig liked it. But she had made a mistake. She said she went paperless. I went into the garage where I kept my filing cabinet of old tax returns. I knew she kept the records for 7 years. If she was saving aggressively for a beach house, there should be a separate savings account growing fat with my overtime pay. I waited until the next day when Linda went to her yoga class. I took a sick day, something I never did. I went into her home office. It was locked. Linda always locked it to keep the cleaning lady out, even though we hadn't had a cleaning lady in a decade. I didn't look for a key. I took a flathead screwdriver from my tool belt and popped the hinge pins on the door. It took me 30 seconds. I walked in. The room was meticulous, files labeled by year and category. I sat at her desk and opened the drawer marked current fiscal year. It was empty. That was odd. Linda was a hoarder of paper trails. I checked the computer. Password protected, of course. I started going through the trash bin under the desk. It was empty. I looked at the shredder in the corner. It was full of cross-cut confetti. She was destroying something. I looked around the room, trying to think like her. She was controlling, paranoid, and arrogant. She wouldn't destroy the proof of her own genius. She would hide it. I pulled the books off the bookshelf. Nothing. I checked under the rug. Nothing. Then I looked at the closet. It was filled with old coats and boxes of holiday decorations. I started pulling boxes down. Christmas lights. Halloween skeletons. In the bottom of a box labeled Easter Decor, beneath a pile of plastic grass, I found a large manila envelope. It wasn't sealed. I pulled out a stack of papers. They weren't just bank statements. They were loan documents. And they were recent. I sat on the floor and began to read. The first page was a statement from our joint checking account. The one she said was tight. The balance was decent, around $5,000, but the transaction history was a bloodbath. There were withdrawals every single week, large ones, $500 here, $1,000 there. They were listed as transfers to an account simply labeled J Primary. I flipped the page. I found a statement for a credit card I didn't know existed. It was in my name, but the billing address was a P.O. box in a town 3 hours away. The balance was maxed out at $25,000. The charges were nauseating. Electronic stores, high-end clothing retailers, liquor stores, video game subscriptions. I felt a cold pressure in my chest. J Primary. We had a son, Jason. He was 32 years old. As far as I knew, Jason was living in an apartment in the city, working as a graphic designer, making his own way. Linda told me every week how proud she was of him, how he was struggling but independent. When I asked why he never visited, she said he was busy building his career. I dug deeper into the envelope. I found a lease agreement. It wasn't for a beach house in Florida. It was for a luxury condo in the city, signed by Linda as a guarantor. The tenant was Jason. The monthly rent was $3,000. I found car payment stubs, a brand new sports car, paid by Linda. My hands weren't shaking. I was steady as a rock. A cold, hard anger solidified in my gut. For 10 years, I had been working overtime, destroying my knees and my back, eating cold sandwiches to save money. I had denied myself a new truck. I had worn boots until the soles fell off. Linda had berated me for buying a cup of coffee. She had called me irresponsible. She had called me a child. Meanwhile, she was funneling my life's blood to our son, allowing him to live like a king while he did absolutely nothing. She wasn't saving for our future. She was funding his present. I looked at the dates. The transfers started 7 years ago. The total amount siphoned out of our accounts was well over $400,000. There was no retirement fund. There was no beach house savings. There was just Jason. I heard the garage door open. Linda was home early. I didn't move. I stayed sitting on the floor of her office, surrounded by the papers. I heard her footsteps coming down the hall. She stopped at the open doorway. She saw the hinges popped. She saw me. "Frank, what are you doing?" Her voice wasn't angry this time. It was terrified. I didn't look up immediately. I picked up the credit card statement. "Who is J Primary, Linda?" She walked into the room, dropping her yoga mat. "Get out of my office. You have no right to be in here." "I have every right. I earned every dime represented on these papers. Who is J Primary?" "It's an investment account," she lied. The lie came out so easily, so practiced. "I'm diversifying our portfolio. J stands for joint." I held up the lease agreement for the luxury condo. "Does joint need a $3,000 a month apartment with a skyline view? Does joint drive a $60,000 sports car?" She froze. The color drained from her face. She realized she couldn't spin this. She crossed her arms, shifting tactics from denial to justification. "He is your son, Frank. He needed help." "Help? This isn't help. This is a lifestyle. I drive a truck with 200,000 miles on it. I beg you for $20 to buy lunch, and you're paying for him to play video games and drink top-shelf whiskey? He's an artist!" she screamed. "He needs time to find himself. The job market is terrible. He was depressed. I couldn't let him starve." "Starve? He's 32. I was a foreman when I was 25. I was feeding us when I was 20. You told me he was working. You told me he was independent. I protected you," she yelled back. "I knew you wouldn't understand. You're so hard on him. You always expect everyone to be a workhorse like you. He's sensitive. He needed a safety net. You didn't build a safety net. You built a hammock made of my sweat." I stood up. gathering the papers. And you paid for it by treating me like an incompetent child in my own house. You gaslit me for a decade. You made me feel small for wanting a hammer. Where are you going? She blocked the doorway. We need to talk about this. We can fix it. I'll cut him back. We can budget. We aren't doing anything. I am going to the bank. You can't take the money. The rent is due next week. He'll be evicted. Good, I said. I pushed past her. She grabbed my arm, digging her nails in. Frank, if you cut him off, he will hate you. He won't survive. If he can't survive at 32 without stealing his father's retirement, then he's already dead. I pulled my arm free. And by the way, I'm not just cutting him off. I'm cutting you off. I drove to the bank. I didn't go to the teller window. I asked for the branch manager. I sat in his office and laid it all out. I closed every joint account. I removed her name from everything that legally allowed it. I opened a new account solely in my name. I transferred the remaining balance, what little there was, into it. Then I called the credit card company for the card in my name that Jason was using. I reported it as fraudulent use. I told them to cancel it immediately and that I would not be paying the balance incurred by an unauthorized user. My next stop was the cell phone provider. I cut Jason's line, then the insurance company. I removed his car. When I got home, Linda was sitting at the kitchen table, crying. She looked smaller, older. The power dynamic had shifted in the span of 4 hours. The CFO was fired. He called me, she sobbed. His card was declined at a restaurant. He's stranded. He has legs. He can walk. I placed a new debit card on the table. This is for groceries. Only groceries. I will receive a text alert for every transaction. If you buy so much as a pack of gum that isn't on the list, I cancel the card. You want to manage finances? Fine. Now you have a budget, a real one. You can't do this to me. I'm your wife. You stopped acting like a wife when you decided to lie to my face every day for 7 years. You're lucky I'm not calling the police for fraud. You forged my signature on those loan documents, Linda. I saw them. She went pale. She knew I had her. I'm selling the house, I said. What? She looked around the kitchen, panic setting in. This is our home. We raised Jason here. No, I paid for this home. You used the equity to fund Jason's vacation. We are downsizing. I am buying a small cabin near the lake, the one I wanted 5 years ago that you said we couldn't afford. You can come with me, or you can go live with Jason in his luxury condo. But I suspect once the rent checks stop, he won't have room for you. It took 3 months to untangle the mess. The fallout was severe. Jason called me, screaming, cursing, calling me a selfish old man. I listened to his voicemail once, then blocked his number. He was evicted 2 weeks later. The sports car was repossessed. Last I heard, he was working as a bartender and living with 3 roommates. He was finally learning what $1 cost. Linda stayed. She didn't have anywhere else to go. But the marriage was different. The trust was gone, replaced by a cold, transactional silence. She no longer sat at the table with her ledger. I hired a professional accountant to handle my taxes. I bought the new truck. I bought the boat. Every Friday, I give Linda cash for the week. She takes it without a word. She doesn't critique my spending anymore. She doesn't ask about the accounts. She knows that one wrong word, one slip up, and the cabin belongs to me alone. A year later, I was sitting on the deck of the cabin, looking out at the water. I had a cold beer in my hand. My phone buzzed. It was a text from the bank. Transaction alert. $45. Local steakhouse. I smiled. I had taken myself out for a steak lunch. It was the best steak I had ever eaten, mostly because I didn't have to ask permission to buy it. I learned a hard lesson that day in the hardware store. Financial control isn't just about math. It's about power. And you never ever let someone else hold the keys to your life, no matter how much you think you trust them. The moment you stop looking at the numbers is the moment you start being a victim. I finished my beer and watched the sun go down. I was 55 years old. I had lost half my savings, but I had regained my dignity. And that was worth more than any beach house in Florida. I checked my bank app. The balance was growing. For the first time in my life, the numbers were real. And they were mine. The silence of the cabin was peaceful. Linda was inside, reading a book. We existed in a functional truce. She cooked, I maintained the property. We didn't talk about Jason. We didn't talk about the past. One afternoon, I came home from fishing to find a letter on the counter. It was from Jason. It was addressed to both of us. Linda was standing there, watching me, waiting to see what I would do. "He wrote to us," she said softly. "He says he's sorry." I looked at the envelope. It was thick. Probably a sob story, followed by a request for money. A loan to get back on his feet. "Read it if you want," I said to Linda. "Aren't you going to read it?" "No." "He's your son, Frank. He's a stranger who robbed me for a decade. Strangers don't get to write me letters." I picked up the letter and walked over to the wood stove. I opened the iron door. The embers were still glowing from the morning fire. "Frank, please," Linda begged, taking a step forward. "Just read it. Maybe he's changed." "People don't change because they wrote a letter, Linda. They change when they have to work for their survival. If he's truly sorry, he can show up here, look me in the eye, and pay me back every cent. Until then, this is just paper." I tossed the envelope into the stove. It caught fire instantly. The paper curled, turning black, the ink disappearing into the flames. Linda watched it burn, tears running down her face. She didn't try to stop me. She knew the boundaries now. "Dinner is in an hour," I said. "I picked up some trout." "Okay," she whispered. I walked back out to the deck. The air was crisp. I felt light. For years, I carried the weight of a debt I didn't understand. Now, the ledger was balanced. I wasn't cruel, but I was done being the fool. I had my truck, my cabin, and my freedom. The cost was high, but the tuition for the lesson was paid in full. I was finally the captain of my own ship, and I wasn't letting anyone else steer ever again.